happy to hear from them if they just go to the website, religiousleadersstudy.org. There's so much more I could say. If you're intrigued, I invite you to dig out my book. It's actually not even expensive. You can get it on Amazon for $20, I think. But it'll say what I would say if I had another 2 hours with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
And now I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Sanjay Srivastav. Is that a good attempt? Professor of Political Science in Benares University. We just met briefly. I was reminiscing about my 2 wonderful opportunities I've had in life to walk beside the Ganges in Benares, or Varanasi. Anyway, Dr. Sanjay teaches international relations. Research interests include soft power, public diplomacy, strategic communication, conflict resolution, and peace in India's foreign policy. Other things, details you can read in your own programs, but we're very happy to have him with us.
20 minutes?
20 minutes? Yeah. That's our goal, I guess.
Good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all my sincere thanks to the organizer for giving me this opportunity to stand here and speak on this issue. What I'm going to speak to you is less Indian, by an Indian, so it's a bit contradiction in terms. And because I know that there are many good people like Professor R.S. Dwivedi ji and Professor Srivastav who can speak on Hinduism, on Indian culture, Indian art, Vedic knowledge better than I do or I understand. And the reason is that they have been in US for nearly 40 years and they wanted to, do this thing while I had, this thing always in the back of mind that I'm in India and I can do it anytime. So that is why this, gap is created. So, I want to take up this, issue from the point of view of international relations and particularly, the developed society versus the developing society, to different contexts, to different times, to different, requirements, necessities, and different challenges. So that is how, the entire story of the environment, the various narratives which come out from the Western world and which come out from the, countries like India or the developing societies or the third world societies, I'm going to, speak to you. One important thing I would like to mention is I have tried to, catch up. It's not... I think it's better now. So, first of all, I would like to give you some glimpses of how the entire story about the concern for environmental degradation started and, how this debate took its course, how it developed, how it evolved, and, what were the major, paradigms on it, and what were the major, basic meta-narratives on it. Yeah, let me start. Can I shift to this slide, Modern Times, slide number 5? Yes, yeah. In early 1960s, Washington, D.C. was witness to 2 rude awakenings. I'm telling rude. One was the March on Washington, D.C. in 1963, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his famous I Have a Dream speech against the racial discrimination. The second was the publication of the book Silent Spring in 1962 by a marine biologist, Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson warned of the dangers to all natural systems from the misuse of chemical pesticides such as the DDT, and questioned the scope and direction of modern science and initiated the contemporary environmental debate. In Silent Spring, Carson asked the hard question about whether and why humans had the right to control nature. This was a significant question. To decide who lives or who dies, to poison or to destroy non-human life. Rachel Carson became a social revolutionary, and the Silent Spring became the handbook for the future of all life on the earth. Now, when Rachel Carson says that the environmental degradation is taking place, the first question comes to our mind, that who is the culprit? The culprit is the growth-oriented model of development, where the growth is in the center, and the emphasis is on the increase in the gross national product and the gross domestic product, heavy industrialization, and the use of non-environment friendly technologies, and that is along with the population explosion, which is one of the corollary of the modernization. This growth-oriented model of development had philosophical basis, the free market principle of economy, the least interference of the state in society in the economy, then unlimited use of Earth's natural resources. For example, John Locke said that whatever nature's element man mixes with his labor is his property, and Locke became the father of the American political system, which ensures freedom and the right to property. And the conviction that Earth has unlimited natural resources, which proved wrong at the later stage. And also another philosophical base, the anthropocentrism. Anthropo means the man. We study anthropology. And it says the Homo mensura doctrine that man is the measure of all things. What is, that is. What is not, that is not. And so, we have to keep man in the center of everything, and whichever is good for man is correct, is ethical, is value-oriented. Otherwise, it is wrong. So anthropocentrism also, gave a profound philosophical basis to the growth-oriented model of development. There was another, like Rachel Carson, there was another scientist, Garrett Hardin. He, in 1968, brought out an article in the famous Science journal saying that the mankind has given, the nature has given mankind many things in common, what he calls the global commons, like our rivers, our oceans, mountains, meadows, green meadows, and many other things. And he says that it is because of the rational instinct of the individual that propels him to overexploit the global commons and eventually leading to their extinction. And he gives a very famous parable that there is a pond in a village and there are 10 fishermen, and evangelically they can extract 10 kgs of the fish, every fisherman, and every fisherman tries to extract more than that, and finally it leads to the end of the life cycle of fishes in the pond. It's a very interesting debate that Garrett Hardin comes out on the tragedy of commons. And that is why we see that most of our commons require our attention, and they are really in a bad shape. Another important, the paradigm in the discourse of environment was the Club of Rome report in 1972, where the law was, a narrative was propounded that that's called Limits to Growth by Donella Meadows. And she came out with her own statistical simulations telling that Earth's natural resources are not infinite. There is a limit, and the mankind has to take up its growth as per that limit. And the Earth's weighing capacity is limited. It cannot be like that we keep on, developing, we keep on producing things and using the wrong technologies, extracting the fossil fuels and other kind of, natural resources, energy resources, and Earth would be, providing this to you just for generations and generations, and this cannot happen. Another important, thing which happened was the Stockholm Declaration, which gave us the concept of sustainable development. But the sustainable development concept was itself challenged by the green political theorist. I come to that point later. Stockholm presented a first taking stock of the global human impact on the environment. And that is to say, for the first time, the political leaders, the Committee of Nations, the state, they accepted, yes, that there is a problem of environment degradation. Till now, basically, it was an academic discussion or the discussion among the civil society groups or the non-state actors or the non-governmental organization. For the first time in 1972, in the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, the Stockholm Declaration accepted that, yes, there is environmental degradation, and then they came out with the concept of sustainable development, that we have to develop, of course, but our development should take care of the needs of the future generation of which has to come, and we must leave enough for the future generation. Next, yeah. Another important debate, which is of quite recent origin, the recent means that in the 1970s or so, was the environmental security, where the environment was related to the security. That's if the ozone depletion is taking place, it has direct impact on our skin, our eyes, and other parts of the body. That's fine, but it also sometimes leads to impact on the natural resources. For example, the drought or the floods occurring, and and as a consequence, the human population is migrating from one place to another place, and that leads to sometimes many conflicts. And international society has been, full of the example of the environmental conflicts where, because of the migration of the population from one place to another place, and because of the crunch of the resources, the scarcity of the resources, marginalization of the resources, the environmental clashes or the conflict has taken place. The green political theory, which I just talked about, they were against the environmentalists on the issue of sustainable development. They were saying that the environmentalists have accepted that very political structure, which itself is the cause of environmental degradation. And they said that if you accept that very structure which is responsible, for the environmental degradation, then you are finally going to end up on the same result. So you need to change the structure of the international society, and the structure of the international society, according to green political theorists, should be that they advocated the excessive decentralization at the local level and centralization at the regional level, because they were of the view that often the environmental problems can be solved at the regional level. So just next to it. So they came out with two notions, eco-anarchism, that is the excessive decentralization at local level, and eco-authoritarianism, centralization at the regional level. So green political theorists, in a way, were just opposed to the environmentalists, and they wanted to make the basic structural changes in the political structure, social structure of the international society, which was, vital to them. Now, what are the Indian anxieties? What does India, think about this, or what is the Occidental approach to environment degradation? For a country like India, for example, Indira Gandhi said in the Stockholm Convention that are not the poverty and need the greatest polluters. This is emblematic of the continued primacy of the fight against poverty over environmental issues in Indian politics. Like for India, the poverty was something very, very important, and we had to fight, to it. And we, like in 1972, were not in a position to change our technologies to become more environment friendly, and instead we looked more towards the poor lot of people whom we were, required to serve at that point of time. But in 1990s, a lively public debate began to emerge around national environmental problems and the climate policy. The mounting impacts of the environmental pollution and the intensified international discussion of climate change led the government under Manmohan Singh to adopt the National Action Plan on Climate Change in 2008. The Modi government's economic policy prioritizes focus on industrialization, foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and India's participation in the international division of labor. Nevertheless, energy and environmental questions play a major role, as well as India's close cooperation with the most important industrialized countries in these areas is also important. This was the time when India started being seen as a rising power, at a country who has a huge market, a very robust economy, developing very quickly in the field of science and technology, computer software, skilled manpower, nuclear technology, nuclear weapons, fourth largest army, and many more things. So the international society started listening to India with great attention, because one had stakes in India and India's market. So India was also, in a way, co-opted in the international negotiations like the G20, and India was also, in a way, asked that we need your cooperation to solve the international problem. Because till now, India was regarded as a country which cannot say yes. India is a country which cannot say yes. Just next. India is a country which cannot say yes in the international negotiations. Be it the negotiation on the nuclear non-proliferation, be it the negotiation about the intellectual property right, or be it the negotiation of the climate change. Because we were always after our, the poor people, because that was our, first and prime concern. So the international society always took India as a spoiler of the talks. Whenever the talks are going, taking place, India will form its own coalition. For example, the coalition of G20, G33, G77, and with the developing countries, India would try to, stop that, negotiation, and would try to mend the thing in the way of the developing countries wanted it to happen. India came out with the concept of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This was the important principle. It was laid down in the UNFCCC also. And according to this principle, the burdens of the climate policy should be shared in an equitable way and according to the capacities of the country in question. Key parameters are a country's per capita emission, the historical share of the greenhouse gas emission, and economic capability. From India's point of view, this implies that the industrialized countries hold greater responsibility for climate protection and that they should lead the way, allowing developing countries like India the same development opportunities that the industrialized countries enjoyed once. Because, in the initial race for the industrialization, developed countries had all, free ground, that they were able to use those technologies not in that environment friendly, and they were, responsible for most of the environmental degradation and pollution and the depletion of the ozone layer and many other, blames on them. So, but when the time for India comes, it has been, taught a lesson that you need to be more environment friendly, which of course India was not going to accept. So but another responsibility was that you are now regarded as a rising power, you are regarded as a major power, and you have to, collaborate with the other nations to make this world better, to make the international society better. India's per capita CO2 emission should never be higher than those of the industrialized countries, yet this created the impression that India's middle class, whose lifestyles and carbon emissions hardly differ from those of industrialized countries, was hiding behind the country's large poor population. India started the negotiation with this notion that we have to decide things on the per capita emission basis. That is, we had the very huge population, and India and China wanted to take advantage of this huge population, that if we decide the things on the per capita basis, then of course India will have a great latitude and the great leeway which no other country except China would have. But it was, not accepted, and it was not acceptable as well. India also talked about the climate justice, that when the per capita emission of many developed countries vary between 7 to 15 metric tons, the per capita emission in India were only about 1.56 metric tons in 2010. Amid the backdrop, India cannot be asked to cut its emission further, as India's Minister Piyush Goyal has argued that just principle should be the polluter pays. And since the developed countries are polluting, they should pay for it. India also said that if it wants to accept the Paris Convention or the Paris Agreement, then it will have to amend its technology, change its technologies, replace its technologies, and this will cost India nearly $3 trillion US, and that is not a small amount. Neither the international market, nor the government, nor the donors can give it, and it has to be, raised from the private sector, which is another difficult task. India also thought that the commercial opportunity will also arise, and there will be many countries or many multinational corporations which would like to stop the transfer of technology from the developed countries to the developing countries, and the intellectual property right cost will be much more than what India expects or the other countries expects. So India always was in this favor that the technology transfer should always be made more feasible if the Paris Convention is to be accepted. Then, of course, if India had to move from the fossil fuel to the other kind of fuel to have its energy requirement fulfilled, then of course it has to do many things differently, which is still a big question before the society. The coalitional diplomacy, I've already talked to you that how India made several coalitions in the climate change talks. The G77 was there, G33 was there, G20 was there. All the coalitions of the developing societies, developing countries, which try to thwart what US was saying or what Canada or France or England was saying.
How many more slides?
Just 2, 3.
Okay, 20 minutes are past.
Okay, I'm already through. Okay. So effects of the climate change on India, like is a big country with huge, coastal area and with the very bad summers also in India. So India is going to be affected much more by the climate, change that is taking place. So it is required that India, being a rising power, being a responsible power, need to sign the, climate change treaty, and that India did on the 2nd October 2016. I stop here. I have to say much more. If the questions are asked, then I can tell that what India has to do in future or what is the road to future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Srivastav. Now it is our pleasure to introduce you Karen Deepnarayan Sarup. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology, political science and literature from Osmania University in India and a master's degree in mass communication from the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. She received her accreditation in public relations from Public Relations Society of America, which is the world's largest, foremost organization of public relations professionals. Karen is a member of the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh and has served as an associate editor in Prajna Bharati in